Hello, everybody. All right, we are live. We're running a few minutes late, but all good. Here we are. I am live with Sanza. If this is your first time tuning in, this is If You Know, You Know show. I'm so excited to be here today. Y'all, I host a show every Wednesday, normally at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we had a special guest in the house who requested a special time. And so, ask and you shall deliver. Today, we're streaming live at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that you're able to catch it. If not, hey, remember that we stream these on Spotify or on all of your favorite streaming platforms, whatever you choose. But this show is one in which I get the pleasure of talking to and interviewing special founders, devs, creators, people that are truly moving the needle forward in Web3, in my opinion. So every single week I have that pleasure. Today it is with the one and only Sanza. How are you, my dear? I am so freaking excited to finally be able to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. And sorry about the whole mishap with the vocaster, but we got through it. Thank you for accommodating the time. I completely did not have anything set up on my calendar, right? So I appreciate you doing this for me. I'm really excited to get into this and kind of dive a little bit deeper into it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So I want to kick it off because my gosh, you are an incredibly busy human being. Like you are forever hosting or talking or posting videos or any of that. So I want to get into that. But real quick before we go there, Sanza, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and maybe how long you've been in Web3.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll do a quick TLDR because I already yap a lot. But no, I came into Web3 full time December 2021, and I had done that after being a mod for a few months and just sort of being involved in several different things at once, and just sort of like getting the feel for the industry, whether it was as an employee, Web3, or a consumer. And then you just sort of juggle both, but more so, my main journey really started December 2021 into where we are now, and it started off as a project manager, dive deeper into let me give it Spaces host a shot, and then it kind of dived a little bit deeper into more so like how do we become into like entertainment media type vibe where is you dive a little bit deeper. It's not just Spaces, it's pre-recorded video content in general, and just kind of like all around just trying to be a creator while also helping other creators, threads, videos, again, just consistent posting and just kind of getting a feel for the expansion of what your niche is and what category you've kind of found yourself in. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's just being this creator that just doesn't have any one specific niche, but he can dive a little bit into several different ones and just kind of take it from there. So that's where I'm at today.
You're a jack of all trades.
Yeah,
Which is really, really cool. So December 2021, we're talking about right after the heyday of the NFT boom, right? We're talking about right after pretty much BAYC had already minted out, and you have, celebrities, rocking it on the Tonight shows and all that kind of stuff,
yeah.
right? Was when you December 2021, were Spaces already a thing or not yet?
Spaces were pivoting, and they were pivoting from Discord BC like Spaces, which is just kind of like hanging out with the homies, into this more of a people were craving more education. They were craving more entertainment. And so you had a lot of, people engagement farming Spaces, fake fighting each other on the timeline so that they can farm more numbers, yada yada yada, right? So it was sort of that, and that was probably, I would say, the sort of the start of that, going into the start of the peak of that, right? Not the peak, but the start of the peak to that. And so that's sort of where I was like, there's something here, and I wanna entertain it. So the already scary leap that I took from Web 2 to Web 3, I took an even scarier leap from Web 3 working for someone else to working for myself.
Oh yeah.
And so it was definitely a challenge. And granted, now I also work with Unfungible, which is also, they're a success in themselves on hosting Spaces as well. They're on a little bit more of this more organized side. They're They've got a huge speaker network and all that stuff. And so I'm always honored and excited to be working with them in general. But yeah, so that's kind of like again where I would say Spaces was, and to kind of like leading into where we are now.
Yeah, yeah. I find the whole thing incredibly fascinating. Unfungible, by the way, shout out to Unfungible, who is freaking killing it with content creation and the vision of having seen that spaces and the social aspect of it for a lot of different reasons, right? For the gathering of people, for the alpha of things, for the entertainment factor, for the educating factor, for a lot of different things. But that the fact that social interaction and then the live stream of it could become an entire business model. And the vision to have seen that from the very beginning is part of the reason that they're fucking killing it, right? So shout out to Unfundable for sure. I remember when Spaces came out, it was very gated to you had to have a certain amount of followers, and then you kind of just got surprised by the fact that you were like, oh shit, I can host a space, you know? And I remember that it was such a flip of the switch to when people started realizing this is an entire business model. One can actually monetize from this. And it became another way, one of the best ways now that the creators, particularly in Web3, are able to monetize their time, right? And monetize their knowledge, etc. You do so many of them and you do so many collaborations. And I think, in my opinion, that Spaces, I've been hosting them for pretty much since Spaces were also became a thing, in Spanish and in English. So I've seen the progression of it. I've seen the success of what it can be. But a lot of people still come into the ecosystem wondering, how the heck do I get started, right? Like how does one transition from being a consumer, or like whatever it is that they're doing on X or any of those platforms, right, to now being the host and actually clicking on that go live button? I'd love to know. I'd love to know a little bit, dig deeper into what that transition for you was, and maybe like what errors did you commit? Because I think we all talk about, I did this and it worked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, but in what ways did you completely fuck up that we should be learning about, right?
Yeah. So I'll say this and kind of reverse engineer it.
Yeah, I love that.
For context, the special shot is like kind of my baby. The show that I've grown out of nothing into something, which has gotten me everything that I have today as a creator. Right. It's also, ironically enough, it was my portfolio that showed the capability I have as a host. And so I I did daily spaces ever since December 2022. And we're just about to pause them effectively starting next Friday,
Mhm.
only because it's daily. We're only pausing the concept of daily spaces. We're not pausing spaces entirely. We are going to go on a little bit of a break just because it's been basically 2 years straight of doing daily spaces.
Saturday and Sunday included?
Hmm?
Saturday and Sunday included?
No, weekdays, daily weekdays. I'll say
Okay,
that.
okay, okay.
Yeah. But and so from there, I want to reverse engineer that back to how I got started, which
Yeah.
is very different than what it looks like now for people to get started. Right back then, it was get in as many spaces as you can as a speaker, get yourself known, get your reputation out there, hang out in spaces for as long as you can, as much as you can, as basically just grind 100%. And it was easy enough, right? You did that, you got there, you were eventually able to host your own spaces. People got to know you, you wanted to know other people, you co-host with them, you have a show, and et cetera, et cetera. Now it looks extremely different, right? The grinding different because everyone wants to do it, right? And so now the pool of spaces hosts has increased so much because everyone wants to be the main character. And I know that sounds so weird to say, but it's true. People have this thing where they're like, "Well, I want to be the host. Well, I could do better than that guy, right?" And so now you have this pool of people who all want to be spaces hosts or creators, but you still have the same amount of good ones that actually try and put their effort into it, right? Um, I'll say this for example: if you want to be just a spaces host and not a creator, you're probably gonna have a hard time growing.
Let me stop you right there because I think that's an interesting thing. What is the difference? Why aren't they interchangeable, a creator and a host?
So I'll say it this way: if you're solely a Spaces host, it's less about you can't be one or the other. It's just more about being a Spaces host alone isn't good enough.
Mm.
You need to have the content to have that get attached to, right? To me, being a Spaces host is secondary to being a creator of content, whatever that content is. So, and I'm not saying you got to post 5 times a day, but I am saying if I go look at your page and all I see are spaces from you, you got to do more than that. You got to have a little bit of a breakup. You got to have a little bit more of like this, spaces, posting something about your life or posting something that you specifically want to talk about, dabble in whatever your niche is and whatnot. Another one, and then spaces. Or if you're having a tight day like me, where you're back to back for like 3 or 4 of them, then you might try to just, maybe bump up a tweet from recently and whatever. Point being is, and it's not that matters a lot. It's just more of when you're on spaces, people go and look at your profile. Yeah. And again, if all they see is that you've been on 5 spaces today and you've done nothing else, you're limiting yourself in terms of your reach, your audience, and the people you could possibly get exposed yourself to so that you can grow your own spaces at the end of the day. So there's a lot of hurdles to jump through today that we didn't have to jump through before, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think it's much easier now to become a host when you created your content and you've made a name or a brand for yourself. You don't have to have reach necessarily. You just need to have content that you put out daily. Like people know you for that content. If you're a thread writer and you write thread all the times and then you decide to host space, that makes sense, right? But the difference from now and before is that you could just be a spaces host and then find your content creation. Yeah. Now it's the opposite. That's how I see it. And so, that's what I would say. It's a difference. Spaces host alone is secondary, is a supplemental role to what being a content creator is.
I love that. How do you pick what kind of niche to go into? How do you pick? And I guess when I'm thinking about when I ask that question is you and I have both seen a lot of different type of spaces, right? They're the ones that are I host a lot of ordinals, for example, ordinals related spaces. Yeah. And sometimes we, the host, we get together and we talk about how consciously we know that it's very tech heavy sometimes because a lot of the discussion is underlying tech, and sometimes that is synonymous with boring and not fun and not sexy. You know what I mean? And so keeping listeners to not just tune in but to be engaged is something that you kind of have to work, like be very conscious of and work towards, etc. But we've also seen a lot of space hosts and a lot of entertainment and Web3 particularly, in which they completely go to the other end of things where it's all about, remember the time that it was the era of like the yelling and the screaming and the cutting up off people and the kicking them off of spaces and all of that, stuff of like, oh man, just without calling out names, it's just, but you know what? That shit worked.
It did.
It worked. And as a space host myself, I would always think like, ain't no way that's going to work. That's terrible. That's terrible. Like I could never do that. And then I would tune in and I would be alerted by 1,000 people are in this space. 2,000 people are in this space. 3,000. And I'm like, what is going on? Why is this, how is this? What are your thoughts on that, Sanza?
I know who you're talking about. And the funniest part is that as much as we love to talk shit about it a lot, they inspired a whole wave of hosts that no one saw coming. For me specifically, they inspired me on the critical discussion side. Right? The yelling, I was like, this is too much. You don't need to yell this much, right? But what I saw was sort of the highlighting the critical discussion, because back in that time, you were afraid to speak up critically. You were afraid to speak up against a project. You were afraid to say something about a project because you might be blacklisted as a person in Web3
Mm.
because and it was such a small ecosystem and it still is that to the point of it's kind of like like if I say something I might this might happen so but now that doesn't matter no one we went to complete extreme no one cares if they get blacklisted
Yeah.
but they also are now towing the line between edgy and just straight up being an asshole right like there's a difference
Yeah.
and so I think right now we're at the stage of where people are getting shaken out. And I mean that more in the sense of there are people, like you said, that are on a little bit on the boring side, but the objectively they bring educational value that not that an entertainer host would not be able to bring. Right?
Mm.
That's hands down. However, because of the state of the industry that we're in, none of that matters. Because if no one retains your information, it's not valuable. You're not sharing information. You're talking to yourself and three or four other people that get what you're saying in a crowd of hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm.
This is solely my opinion because I also came from being a nutrition coach for 4 or 5 years. And my whole job was breaking down complex concepts and putting them into simple terms so that even the dumbest person can get it. And that is the whole point
Yeah.
of what I found myself being in that niche. Like, how can I bring this to his spaces? Because this is what I want to do. And I actually started off doing this, doing nutrition talk in a Web3 industry where no one cared. Yeah, but no one cared. And that was fine but the show still grew. But then it got to a point where I had started a special shop and that show was still with me. And then for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to host about 10 to 15 other shows over the week, host or co host. And I found myself all of a sudden co hosting 20 spaces a week for no reason other than just putting in reps on spaces and all that. And so what I ended up doing was just cut the number in half. I got myself down to 10 spaces and all that stuff. But I more importantly retained the ones that I truly found valuable. Eventually, I stopped talking about the nutrition stuff solely because I realized, cool, that's not what people want right now. But I can still take the concept of how I was breaking down complex shit into simple stuff and put it in this show now and see if people like that. Basically marrying and because of the person that I am, I like to think I'm very animated. I talk with my hands. I'm Italian. I'm all this, and so, and I like to try to use jokes or comedy as a way to help people retain information more. Because when you're laughing, you're retaining, and
Yeah.
that's how I look at it. So I always try to marry comedy with education in anything I do. But and this is something that I'm saying as a warning to a lot of people,
Mm.
whether they're creators or not. When you stick yourself into one personality so often, and I'm not saying it needs to not be you, but if you're amplifying one side more than you usually do, right? When I go out and socialize, that's the person I am. But if I'm taking that and I'm bringing that in here and I'm throwing it at spaces, and then when I go out, I'm exhausted. So I'm taking from that and I'm putting it to here. There are two downsides to it. One, you might find yourself a little exhausted if you overextend in the beginning. And two, you might find that people don't want to see the other personalities of you, right? And so what I've started doing is practicing the balance of being this entertainer while also being this person that can discuss things a little bit more seriously, very much like we're doing right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just straight up jokes 100%. I got something to say that you might be able to take away with you. And I think at the end of the day, that's something. The good news is you don't need to worry about that right away. The only thing you need to worry about is making a name for yourself right away. And then you can touch back and refocus after you gained your audience, after you gained your attention, and then can figure out where you want to go forward with that. So,
Yeah. I really love that. The conversations that I've had with content creators or builders in this space range a lot, but a common factor to all of them is the fact that they feel it's difficult to, number one, be so consistent. What you just said of like hosting 20 spaces in 1 week scared the shit out of a lot of people and said, oh, there's no way I could do that, right? In addition to posting, in addition to all of that, in my opinion, the creator economy has like no into it, no cap to it, which is what makes it so attractive, and which is what makes it so um, uh, perfect for different people from different walks of life, because it doesn't matter even where you came from. It doesn't even matter what your tools you have. It's, you can mold it. You can, as long as you know where to go, what people want, how to do it, you can make something out of that, and utilize content creation to do that. But a lot of the common complaints from people are, number one, super duper time consuming. How do I know, how I should really, like, where's my biggest reward, right? ROI on here. And number two, I always have to be on. Like, I always have to be on. And, if you're a Clemente, for example, shout out to Clemente, right? It's like a constant battle with the public of like, I can't really talk about what I'm buying or what I'm selling at this point, because I'm gonna get hated either way, right? If you're an NFT god, right, that's a completely different thing. A person who came in, and I think he's brilliant, but there is a story there to learn from. A person that came in, learned Web3, made a name for himself, and then decided, I'm changing all of that and I'm going the route of like building a business out of that. So anyway, I want to stop my rant and let you tell us your opinion on that. Like, number one, how do we remain content creation, or how do we retain content creation in the creator economy really attractive for a person to take a risk on? Because it is a tremendous risk of normally a person leaving a 9 to 5 or working after that 9 to 5 to make something happen, when number one, it's super duper time consuming. Number two, you're probably going to be hated at some point. You could argue that, to be hated means that you're doing the right thing, but it is painful. Yeah, right. And then, number three, how do you balance that? And how do you truly remain authentic to yourself? How do we know, that that the person that you are getting on Spaces, that you're getting on live stream, that you're getting IRL, that you're getting at home, et cetera, is truly a person that's not just doing that just to get you to pay them for whatever it is that they're about to sell you, And so a lot of people end up saying that it feels like I'm selling my soul to the devil to be able to make a name for myself and to have a reputation, right? So, like, what would you say to a person like that?
I will say imposter syndrome is a bitch. And for anyone who says, I've seen people do things for free, and when I've asked them, why are you doing it for free? They would say something along the lines of, well, it's just so easy for me to do. Why would I charge for it? And all I can think of, why the fuck wouldn't you charge for it if it's that easy? Like, it's, if anything, it's like, there's a few people that comes to mind. I don't want to name them because I don't want them to think I'm attacking them, but it's just more of the sense of that Web3's biggest problem is trying to be this golden, perfect child that they're never going to be, because they're already tainted by all the people that think they're super edgy on the TL, doing non-disclosed shills anyway and getting away with it. And they're sitting there thinking they need to be perfect in any way because they don't have any business sense. Because that's the reality of it. If you took any Web3 content creator and put them in the room with someone who has some tying back to Web2, the questions that they would ask them would probably make them shit their pants. What's your cost per impressions? How do you gauge that? What's your audience like? Who's your target audience? Why is that your target audience? On top of that, why do you think this is going to pay off long term? On top of that, how much longer do you see this sustaining for? And what can we realistically expect out of you if we pay you this much, right? People either end up undercharging or to the point where they get the job and then they burn themselves out because they're like, fuck, I'm not getting paid enough for this shit. Even whatever that number is, right? And more often than not, the number needs to be way higher than what they're thinking. But then comes the other issue. They end up overcharging because like, well, if I can go this high, I'll go a little bit more. And they don't get the job. And then they think they're doing something wrong because they're charging too much, or more so, they don't have the reach that insert influencer with reach, real reach has, and they could just pay that guy for a way more return on their investment than, Bozo that charges too much. And so the reality is that we kind of need to just simply get over ourselves when it comes to. I can understand doing things for free because you need proof of work. That's fine. But once you have proof of work, you don't need to do anything for free anymore. You do need to figure out what that number looks like for you on a per hour basis and how much time you're putting in any given task. Add that up and put that in. And so, and obviously, I'm coming from a different side of it because I've been the nutrition coach in Web 2 with the same thoughts. Well, if I charge $165 a month for me to consult on people on their nutrition once a week, that's too much. But then I did the math and I'm like, I'm only getting paid $25 an hour. That's fucking bullshit. Like, and that's before taxes. So like, it's just, the real number should have been 225, even if I were getting less customers, but I still would get the same amount that ended up being more overall. But like, that's neither here or there. That's just more so to highlight the importance and emphasize how much we really suck at being our own business developer. Yeah. And so that's what the reality is. So everyone needs to educate themselves a little bit more in business. And I'm speaking this more as a 34-year-old than I am as like, an experienced creator, because I think this is the bigger issue is the average age of the crypto degen. They just don't have enough experience to really feel that yet. They can only listen to what I'm saying and hope that I'm right at the end of the day, which you have to go and make your own mistakes to learn your own lessons. Yeah. That's really the truth of it.
I love that. I wanna tag a little bit more about that and switch gears into like your family life, and not that I'm asking you like what's I'm not gonna get deep into like introduce us to your wife and your kids and stuff like that, but I love the fact that you are very open, and you have been through more recent times. You've been open about posting, like this is the intimate side of me, this is my family, these are my kids, etc. It's very different to the average degen, to your point, because that is not the average age group. 30 and above is not the norm here. It's 30 and below, and probably more like 25 and below is probably more accurate. So I would love to know how you think, like what inspired you to do that, or for the old, it sucks that I even have to say this, but for the older people like me.
Yeah. I absolutely hate Web3 for making me feel like I'm already in my 40s. Even
Thank you. My gosh.
But I will say this. I meant to answer this earlier because you asked about balance.
Yeah.
And this actually ties perfectly into this question, which is that for me personally, so I'll say this. When I really got serious about content creation, my daughter was young. She was 5 months. So like she was still kind of getting into her, like, I'm still a newborn, but now I'm starting to, respond to you. Right. So like that phase was easy for me to manage starting out. And what it was, I was doing like 500, 600 tweets, including replies a day for like a few months. I was doing the 20 to 30 spaces for a month and a half at most. And so I had started off on this extreme, like high pedestal where I was just trying to see what works and what didn't. Right. But again, different algorithm, way different algorithm than what we have now. So I think the concept still applies, but proceed cautiously, right? And so that's where, so now what I found my happy spot to be is anywhere from 10 to 15 spaces a week, right? Most of them are from Unfungible, where they sign me a client, I work with them in that way, right? But some of them are some like espresso shop, panel talk that I organize, just whatever, just for the sake of getting a discussion going that I really want to get into. Today was talking about user generated content taking over, taking over marketing, right? And we got into that, but just more so of the idea of that. My new balance has been 10-15 spaces a week is happy for me. 2 to 4 posts a day is happy for me, like main posts. And then I reply as much as I can to I don't even know what that number looks like anymore. But if I have to guess, we're probably anywhere from 100 to 200, including replies. So like, but and then the reason why it's so easy for me to do is because my guilt is immediately gone because I pick my daughter up at a certain time of the day and I'm all hers for the next 4 to 5 hours until she goes to bed.
Mm.
And then I'll check in, right? Obviously, I'll check in from time to time within those 4 to 5 hours, but you won't catch me like, you know, slouching down, looking at my phone for 20, 30 minutes straight while my daughter's just staring at me, waiting for me to talk to her, right? Like, that's never going to happen. So that's every day. That's Monday through Sunday, no matter what. And well, Saturday and Sunday is a lot more time to her, but like just overall, that's every day. And so the one consistent thing that I always have is those 4 to 5 hours just for my daughter. And then everything else just falls into place. Right. And so I could wake up earlier, make my day a little bit longer that way, but it doesn't really help that much because I still got to help my wife get her ready for daycare. We got a second kid coming, and that's going to be a whole nother ball game. So my routine is probably going to change pretty soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how I maintain the balance with my family, with this and everything. I also grew up in an immediate family of 17. I have 3 older sisters. They have a bunch of kids. Yeah, so we got a really big family when it comes to that. Traveling is a bitch when we all try to travel together, because getting dinner tables for more than 10 is impossible.
Golly. Yesterday I took my kids real quick to a trip to like a night getaway right before school starts. And it's so funny you said that because there was this family, like we're in a super touristy area, and you had to cross a bridge, and we were crossing the bridge, and coming the other way was this huge crowd, and you could tell that they were a family. So I told the kids, stand to the side for 1 second, right? And just let them go. It was like 25 of them. And my son, after they passed, my son goes, that was a huge family. I bet you they're Italian.
Yeah. They definitely are. And on top of that, we're in a world today where people just I'm experiencing 2 very extremes. One is like, I don't want kids. I don't need, and I'm like, good for you. Like, that's fine. I'm not gonna shit on you as long as you don't shit on me, right? Mm-hmm. You shit on me, you're gonna get shit back. Like that's how this works. And then there's the other extreme where they're like, I want to have a whole fucking football team, and like on social media, you're like, guess how many kids I have? The number just keeps going, and they just have like 10, 15 kids, and I'm just like, yo, y'all gotta chill. Like at some point, you gotta chill. Yeah, so I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of those. 5, 10, 15 years even.
Yeah. Let's talk about those 10, 15 years from now, right? Where do you see this social media, social connection, audio experiences that spaces now have become such a big thing, particularly in Web3? Where do you see this going in 5, 10 years?
So Twitter Spaces killed Clubhouse, right? Effectively. I mean, some of us, maybe not all of us, some of us remember Clubhouse. I wasn't as active on Clubhouse as I'd like to be, right? But I had to participate because there was a nutrition talk happening there, and my boss at the time wanted me to be involved, and I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. But just more so, it's interesting because Twitter Spaces now is much more widespread. Clubhouse had a limitation. You had to invite people to come onto it, right? You had to be invited to get onto the platform. And so that was
an iPhone.
What?
Only if you had an iPhone too.
Only you had an iPhone. I mean, no one needs an Android anyway. But no, I think it'll be interesting to see if it still ends up being Twitter Spaces, or if it's just another twist on live social audio in itself, that it ends up becoming this. It just ends up becoming ingrained in marrying streaming, because streaming by itself to me doesn't particularly seem. When I look at the stream, I'm like, typing in the chat, I'm like, I don't feel really like I'm engaging with them. Obviously I am, but like, it's not the same as when I'm on the spaces. And let's say Joe Rogan was my favorite podcaster, right? He's not, but if he was and he was hosting a space, that means I get the opportunity to talk to my favorite podcaster.
Yeah.
I get to raise my hand and go back and forth with them without having to be there, right? So I think that is a huge benefit live social audio has to offer. But I don't know that X Spaces lives. Actually, that's a lie. I think X Spaces will live much, much longer than most. I also think it'll lean heavier into one crowd than over the other. I'm thinking like Tucker Carlson hosting one in place of, being a news anchor. Talking, Elon Musk and Donald Trump having a one-on-one on Spaces, right? I do think it will eventually become more of a whoever has high reach game kind of vibe. And I think it even stresses more importance to gain your reach now so that you can have that option when that time does come. Whether or not that's 5-10 years, I don't know, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's here to stay. It's just going to be more of a question of what other features are going to get introduced into it. Because if you notice, a lot more people like the face-to-face. They like the personable amount, but they also like to engage with you. And the live chat might not be enough. So I think there's that happy medium if we can marry that with streaming in one go. Right now we are on Spaces and we are streaming, but they're not together. But like they should be. As you know, Chris and I have done tripod and laptop pointing at StreamYard, doing that in X Spaces, but then people are complaining about delays because it's not perfect. It's not meant for that. And so there's still latency issues that we still are experiencing, but I don't know. TLDR, I think it'll end up becoming more popular because podcasts are getting oversaturated on their own and people want to be there for the experience. So there are people who don't know that X Spaces exists. And on top of that, there are not enough Web2 creators coming over here to do that. And so it'll be interesting to see what survives, whether more come over to X Spaces or if another platform ends up taking the cake or most of the market share for creators to flock to, whether it's monetization opportunities, exposure opportunities, whatever it is. Content creators are just becoming the new celebrities. It's just more about what type of content creator are you? Are you going to be a consumer one where you buy an item, you do some content because you just like the item and you post it, you go viral sometimes and that's it? Or are you going to be like a full-on, full-time content creator where you're your own editing team, you're your own producer team, you're your own BD, your business developer, and just everything in one? And then there's everything in between. People with teams who do all that, and they just have to focus on being an entertainer or a creator, vice versa. And so it'll be interesting to see where the future is. And I think that's what it's going to end up coming down to is before 20 years ago, content creator title wasn't really a thing. It's only going to become more of a thing as we go. Yeah. So I think we're just going to break out into niches where you just have your own category at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said. I'm going to steal it from you. Content creators are becoming celebrities.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. Hey, yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but there are some Instagram ones that have made it into movies. And like, I've seen those movies and I'm like, I've seen that guy on Instagram.
Yeah.
But like, he's not like an actor.
Yeah.
He's just a content creator. And so I really think that, or I guess the better way to look at it from a Web2 perspective is micro influencers are only going to get, that category is only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
People are starting to learn about what it takes. There are courses on this shit now. There's master classes on this shit.
100%. Yeah. There's studies now done on it. Like it's not just,
there are laws being put in place to prevent kids from what is it, from kids getting used for content purposes, to the point where if they are the content, they get the money, and if they fight it, then they win automatically because of the said law. I don't remember what state, but I do know that you're gonna get narcissists, social media influencers, just helping kids just for the sake of content, which is crazy. That's crazy to me.
Crazy. That is crazy. My have a brand new niece. Well, she's not too brand new anymore, but a couple months old. And my sister and her husband decided from very early on, when she got pregnant, of like, no social media presence for my niece, and they made it a point to share it with the entire family so that we all knew when the baby's born, like even at the baby shower, like don't be posting things of, the belly or the newborn, or, this is my brand new, like they made it a point. Right. Yeah. And we willingly, of course, like that's definitely not something that we're going to fight with. But it's interesting that newer parents have to think about that kind of thing, right? Where it's not a sudden innate thing of like, I don't know. It's not. When I had kids, none of that was a problem, at all. And now I see it changing to where parents now, as they should, understand social media in a very different way than we did and that other generations do. And so the protection that comes embedded with that of like, this is my newborn, I'm not exposing them to all of the horrors and nastiness that, potentially social media comes with, is fucking impressive, to tell you the truth. It's impressive that or maybe that's the wrong word. It's sad in a way that one needs to protect, that one needs to think about that. You know what I mean? Of like, I am not going to do this because of all the things that we have witnessed. But also it is impressive that if we want to change the way that social media influences and creates the youngest minds that we have and exposes them in different ways, and, generations past us, then that's the kind of way that we have to deal with it. So,
yeah, I want to add to what you're saying there, is that I think there's more of a happy medium than people realize, right? Yeah. Some of the stuff I've seen on social media in general is absolutely crazy. You should not be sharing your full baby's name on social media on a daily basis. Like, that's crazy talk to me. Like, but you can say their nickname maybe, or you can say like, you can show them, but like for me personally, I've moved. I was posting my daughter a long time ago, and then I decided, well, I don't think I want to post it that much. I just want to post it every once in a while to like highlight maybe the kind of day I'm having, because I am a parent after all. She's a huge part of my life, but I'm never gonna say her full name. I'm never gonna put out a picture or a video that I think would be smart to put out. Like, like I did put out one video where it was a joke of her, because we were reading her off of the pacifier and she was losing it. But like, that was the 5th outburst for me in like 2 days. And I was like, yeah, this is fine. I'm not doing anything crazy here. But like, I don't know, naked in the bathtub? No, you shouldn't do that. Right? Like, we joked about it a lot when we were growing up, and we were showing like, oh, look at this picture, whatever. But like, that's very easily transferable to like, oh, let me post this for all followers and the audience to see. And now you have this very dark side of social media to be concerned about when it comes to stuff like that people wouldn't even think about, right? And I've used Web3 as an example to highlight that a little bit, where I think the best thing I can think of right now is when the racist meme coins were happening.
Oh, yeah.
That's what decentralization looks like. Like, whether you like it or not, that's full decentralization, right? Even though it's on a chain that's a little bit more centralized, that's decentralization in its most honest and brutal form. And if you didn't like that, then you don't really want decentralization. You want a happy medium of, you want the middle of full centralization and full decentralization, where the shit that no one really cares for or wants to see, that gets moderated in some way, shape, and form. But there's still freedom on the other side of that where you actually enjoy that, right? Of course, we're never going to get that because we can never have just the perfect balance. But I do think at some point that's what everyone actually yearns for as we sit here and talk about decentralization on a daily basis, as we sit here and talk about decentralizing content creation, even and just everything in general. So, like, hopefully, we do have a better, brighter future ahead when it comes to something like that. But at the end of the day, we all succumb to human nature and our regular, our natural instincts. So I don't know.
That's right. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today and showing us that other human side of you. I think that you are such a brilliant content creator in the space, a brilliant person, human being that's just kicking ass every single day out there. I love to see your beautiful like family pictures because I think you allow us to see a very different side of you. I also love to tune into spaces and hear you saying like jokes and making people laugh. I think it's genuine, and I think that it makes you as successful as you have been. So
Yeah, I appreciate you, Belle. Thanks for having me on. Seriously, and I even lost track of this time. I didn't realize. I was like, oh shit.
back, you are so back to back. So
Yeah.
I told you I was going to keep it under an hour, or give you a little bit of leeway. And
Yeah,
good
I
host,
appreciate
a good host does that.
Yeah, I was gonna even say maybe I don't know, maybe we can do another like a part two with Chris involved because Chris and I have been very intertwined in the lot because I know you've interviewed him too. And so like I don't know, maybe we can do a part two at some
I
point
would
later
love
on.
that. Yes, I would love that. I would totally love that. Yeah, I'm hoping to see Chris in LA also this weekend. Are you going to be?
No, I can't. I'm too busy getting ready for the second kid coming up in 6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, it's 8 weeks, but he's kicking my wife's ass, so I'm assuming he's gonna come out early.
Yeah. Well, the first kid never comes out early, or not like
Not like super early. Yeah.
not like super early. But once it starts on like baby number 2 and beyond, anything goes. Anything goes. So stay home. Do not
Yeah.
travel during this time.
Yeah.
Do not travel. All right, guys, listen, if you are tuning into this space, I appreciate you being here. If you are watching us on live stream, I super appreciate you being here. This show is If You Know, You Know. I do this show every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also catch it on any of your favorite lives, any of your favorite streaming platforms, and also on YouTube. So look us up there. If you're not already doing so, follow Sanza and tune into any of his shows. They're all super fun, entertaining, helpful, educational, you name it. Sansa, you have any parting words for us before we end?
No, you're doing an incredible job, especially with as a creator yourself, making sure you're not stuck to one platform. And I cannot stress that enough. I spread out as much as you can, doing one thing. She's doing one thing, and she's on multiple channels. You cannot do anything smarter than that right at the beginning from the get go. Even if it's bad, it doesn't matter. You're doing it. You're practicing it. You need to do that more. There are way too many people who have gotten ruined from sticking to one platform way too much. So that's my final parting words. Well, again, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'll do this any day. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. For you, I'll see you on the flip side. And hey, if you are going to VCon, let me know. And I would love to meet you in person. Let's hang out. Let's have a drink and buy me a coffee. I am Colombian and I will never say no to coffee. See you guys later. If you didn't know, now you know, baby. See you guys. And let me